Hello and welcome to another Klemi tutorial video. In this particular screencast I'll be teaching you how to create a custom service grid. Now you should be familiar with our standard service grid if you're a user of Klemi. When you come to the Service Manager homepage you will get those three buttons there, and the service grid takes you to the default service grid. Every service grid comes with a number of columns across the top, and these are customizable. So for example, if I didn't want to show the location here, I could simply delete that column and choose up here update current column set, and there we go. It has updated, and I now have a column set without the location. Now, that was just me refreshing the page to show you that it's worked. Now, of course, in general, deleting things is probably not the most useful. You want to be able to add. So let's just have a quick go at adding something. So you got your eye in. Why don't we add a column here that will give us an ecclesiastical calendar. So I'm going to put that next to the time. Add column left, ecclesiastical calendar, save. There it is. I'm going to update the current column set, and I'm just going to refresh the page to make sure it's there, and there it appears. And you'll see that where there is a date that matches the ecclesiastical calendar, it shows First Sunday after Trinity. Right, so that and many other similar possibilities are available to you for customizing your service grid. However, it is also the case that Klemi allows you to create multiple grids. So imagine you have your default service grid. That's what we're looking at right here, and it's got most of your basic information on it. But let's say you also want a grid for your musicians, but you only want a grid that has only the information for your musicians on it. You don't want your poor musicians having to pore over a table that's got all sorts of stuff about who's doing the all-age teaching slot, or who's the reader, and so forth. How do we do that? Well, Klemi allows you to make any number of additional service grids. Over on this side, the menu here shows you've got the service grid, your standard service grid, and then underneath here you've got a button that says Other Grids. And you'll see here I have already created two different additional grids. Now if we go to those, you'll be able to see how this works. So this grid here has got different titles, different column headings. Let me show you another grid, the youth grid. This one too has got different columns in it, and this will be a useful grid to share with your youth leaders, specifically your explorers on your Sunday school leaders, but it doesn't have all the information that you would want if you were a service leader, for example. Each grid can be shared in its public form with a select number of people, and by having multiple different grids you enable yourself to communicate just the right amount of information to each person as they need it. So how do we make a new service grid? Well, let's go back to our default service grid. Here it is. Let's say we'd like to make a grid just for our readers, for the sake of argument, just to keep it nice and simple. So we're going to make a grid in which we show only the reading and the reader and nothing else. So we're going to start deleting these columns. We might have added some as well on this particular instance. In this particular instance, I'm not going to add any extra columns because I don't want my new grid to have any more columns than the one that we're looking at already has. So I've taken my default service grid and I've deleted a whole load of columns. Now you may be saying, goodness me, you don't want to be doing that. Why are you deleting a whole load of columns off your service grid, your main service grid? None of this has been saved so far. You'll see that 3 new buttons have appeared up here. Update current column set, save as new column set, or undo changes. If you've made a mistake, undo changes will reset it. At the moment, nothing has saved. I've simply tinkered around with the stuff that's on the screen. If I click update current column set, default, well then my default column set will now only have 2 columns, and you'll have lost all the information about the number of column sets that you had before. You won't lose the actual information in the columns, that's always there, but you will have lost those settings. But if I now say save as new column set, it's like the save as button on a Word document, it tells me, it gives me a new, it tells me to give it a new name. I've renamed it, and notice the web address at the top here now is test.Klemi.co, service manager, service grid, readers. So here's my new service grid that I've created. You'll see that if I come over here, it's now been added to the number of service grids, and I can merrily go and fill in the information here. Every service grid that has an admin view, like we're in right now, which means that you can change it, as I'm doing right now, also has a public view. So if I go over the world here, public links, other grids, you'll notice that the readers grid is down here. If I click on that, you'll see this is exactly the same grid that we've just been looking at, only nothing can be changed. I can't edit it. So that's how you create an additional service grid. Let's go back now to the readers grid, and there we are with our new grid. Now, just one piece of information that I think is always useful to people as they're trying to understand the grids. Think of grids as a window into the information that exists on Klemi. When you open a new window, it gives you a new perspective on the same information. When you get rid of that window, or when you change that window, you don't change what's inside the room, the information, you just change the perspective. So let me illustrate what I'm trying to say. On the standard service grid, you will see that the reading here is John 1. Let's say I change the reading to John 3. Now, that's updated there. If I now go to the readers grid, you will see the same information is here. That information, this column here, simply gives a window into information that is already there. I can in fact delete the reading column on this grid and the reading column on the other grid, and the information would still be there. If I were to reinstate the column, the information would still appear. So there we go. That's a short little tutorial on how to create custom service grids.